I'm notorious YouTuber John Bundy, and you're watching Generation Pixel.
And that was the wonderful Mr. John Bundy, and if you're not aware of his channel, I will leave a link down in the description. You can go and check him out at your leisure. But no doubt you're here to see my video game pickups of June 2023, and more importantly, whether I'm sticking to the laser focused pickups and only buying important games that should be coming into the collection, and not just filling the shelves full of PlayStation 2 shovelware. So if you want to see if I've stuck to my guns again this month, you just wait until after these. Now, as per normal, I'm going to go through the pickups chronologically. I'll show you the newest games first and then work my way back to that juicy retro at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. And the first game that's coming into the collection, kinda again, is Persona 5 Royal. Now, I do have Persona 5 Royal digitally, but as I said last week, I'm looking to get rid of, well, not rid of the digital, but bring all the digital games that I've got into the collection in a physical manner. And Persona 5 Royal was an absolute must for me, and not only because it's in this wonderful steelbook, but also it's one of my top 10 games of all time. Now, for anyone who hasn't played Persona 5 or any of the other Persona games, probably the highest compliment I can give this particular title, that it does compete with Final Fantasy VII and Suikoden 2 when it comes to my all-time favourite JRPGs. Now, I know that statement probably caused a few intakes of breath, but I am absolutely not kidding, not in the slightest. When I personally discovered Persona 5 back in 2020, and a big thank you to Dylan over at Plupatube TV, it took only a matter of hours before I knew that I was going to fall in love with this game, and fall in love with it I did. Graphically it's stunning, the sound design's fantastic, and the soundtrack is, well, head and shoulders above most that you get out there. But what truly makes it great for me is the turn-based combat and the fantastically complex but fun story that you're whisked along while you're playing this particular game. So Persona 5 Royal for the PlayStation 5 coming into the collection, where it will stay forever. Next up, and staying with the PlayStation 5, is another game that I already have in the collection. I have it physically, just not for the PlayStation 5. And I don't even have the PlayStation 4 version of this game yet, because it's The Last of Us Part 1. Now, without a doubt, The Last of Us was probably, no, not even probably, it was the best game of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. And yes, it came out very late in the PlayStation 3's life cycle and was immediately remastered for the PlayStation 4, which launched, well, just about at the same time as The Last of Us. Now, I haven't picked up the PlayStation 4 copy because I'm quite happy with the PlayStation 3 version of the game. I do have digital access to The Last of Us on the PlayStation 4, but I thought waiting for the PlayStation 5 remaster, the ultimate way to play this game, was the way to go. The only problem being, it has crashed my PlayStation 5 twice now. It's just switched off, no heat warnings, nothing, just turned off the PlayStation 5. So I'm going to get the vacuum cleaner out, give the PS5 a good old dusting, and let's see if it copes with it then, because if it doesn't and I pick up Final Fantasy 16, I'll probably be onto the same problem. But that's The Last of Us Part 1, the definitive way to play this game, allegedly, into the collection where it will stay forever. Next up, we're moving away from the PlayStation 5 and moving on to the Switch, because the Switch truly is finding a place in this heart. I say it just about every video, especially every pickups video, but it's true. I'm absolutely adoring the Switch at the moment, and I'm looking forward to collecting more games for it. And the game that I've collected for it this time was kinda doubly important, because it's Disgaea 5 Complete. Now, obviously the first reason that I picked it up, it was this lovely sort of collector set. It wasn't just a standalone Switch game, and as you can see, it came with an official art book, a couple of posters which I haven't opened yet, and the original soundtrack CD. Now, that was part of the reason that I did pick up this version when it came away, but I was going to pick it up anyway, because if you've seen my previous pickups, you know I've already got Disgaea 1 Complete, Disgaea 4 Complete, and Disgaea 6 Complete. So that just leaves 2 and 3, because Disgaea 5 Complete is now in the collection, and hopefully I'll get round to playing this series soon, but it's going to be here for a long time anyway. Now that was the one and only Switch game that I picked up this month, so we're moving back to the PlayStation and the PlayStation 4, and the first one that I've brought into the collection. Now it's kind of shovelware when you think about it, and then kinda not, because it's 13 and it's a remake for the PlayStation 4. Now I did have a couple of reasons to pick up 13 limited edition in the PlayStation 4. One is to compare it to the PlayStation 2 game, because I've heard that the PlayStation 4 port isn't good at all, but until I play it I won't know for myself. I'll just have to give it its own chance. But also it comes in this lovely steelbook, and yes, I'm starting to get this bug for steelbooks. I don't know where it came from or why it's here, but anytime that I see a half decent steelbook now, I'm almost certain to pick it up. So yes, in many ways this is the game that I probably shouldn't have or didn't need to pick up, but it was a steelbook. It's a game that I can compare against the original game back on the PlayStation 2, so I'll get some use out of it anyway, and it looks pretty, and it's in the collection Forevermore. Next up, and we're still staying with the PlayStation 4, and this is a game that I should have picked up a long time ago, but I was terrified to pick it up, absolutely terrified to pick up Doom. The remake, the remaster, the reboot, whatever you want to call it, on the PlayStation 4. Now I'm not terrified of this game because of the content of the game. It's a first person shooter, and anyone out there that knows me knows that first person shooters tend to lead me down that slippery slope to motion sickness Phil, where I'm going to have my head down a toilet pan for at least half an hour after playing 10 to 15 minutes of a first person shooter. Now of course things have improved with video games over the years, and frame rates have got not only higher but smoother, and as high and smooth as the frame rates can get, well, that sometimes helps me play the game. Well, at least play the game without having to run to the bathroom every 15 to 30 minutes. Now I've still got to install and play this particular version of Doom, and I'm looking forward to it mostly, just not looking forward to the possibility of the motion sickness. But when I saw it in this wonderful UAC pack, I thought, why not add it to the collection anyway? And if it does cause me to throw up, then it's just a reminder that I can't play first person shooters. Next up is still with the PlayStation 4, and it's a game that I've only ever played on Game Pass. I don't own it digitally, that's going to be the first time it's up in the collection, and it's a game that absolutely took me by surprise when I first played it, and that was all thanks to Gordon over at Gibby84 Gaming, who recommended quite highly that I get this played, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy. Now without a shadow of a doubt, it was Marvel Avengers that sort of swayed me away from picking up Guardians of the Galaxy when it first came out. Now I know it's quite a silly thing to do, to totally discount a game because of a previous game, but Marvel Avengers did leave a pretty bad taste in the mouth, and it took a little while and a little persuasion from the likes of Gordon to get this played. I was so happy to get this played when I finally got round to it, and to get my hands on this Cosmic Deluxe edition, which includes a lovely steelbook, yes, another steelbook, and yet another art book. It has a download as well for the CD this time. It's a shame they didn't put the physical one in, but I suppose it was to save some room not only in the box but also in my shelves, I suppose. But that's Guardians of the Galaxy coming into the collection, where it will stay forever. So that was the last of the PlayStation 4, and we're moving away from Sony and onto Nintendo again. Yes, Nintendo is starting to worm its way into this old cold black heart here. But the first pickup was a gift from Gordon over at Gibby84 Gaming, who I met just recently, and he gave me Etching Odyssey 4. Now this game I know absolutely nothing about, I haven't played it before, I haven't even watched any gameplay on it. It is however an Atlas game, and after finding Persona 5 back in 2020, I think it's fair to say that I've more than dipped a toe into the Atlasverse. Now I don't know when I'll get a chance to play this game, but it's here, thanks to Gordon, into the collection, where it's going to remain forever, and it will get played, hopefully sooner rather than later. Now next up we're moving away from the 3DS, and we're staying with Nintendo however, and still staying with DS, because it's just plain old vanilla DS. And I've picked up 3 games that I'm going to show all at once here, because they all have, well, the same purpose, and you'll see that when I bring them up here. And that is Age of Mythologies, and then you have Zoo Tycoon and Anno 1701. Now you might be asking yourself, why would you pick up these games? Well, quite simply, these are PC games. These were the types of games, and more importantly, these were the games that I did play on PC back in the 90s and absolutely loved them. I had no idea that there was such a big port over to the DS with old or earlier PC games, but I've got to try these, and I will be trying these. Now there will be a video coming up for these games. I'll do a standalone standalone video. I might even have another one coming. That all depends on what happens with the post and stuff, but there's going to be at least those 3 games. I'm going to be talking about the PC versions, I'll be talking about the DS versions. Looking forward to diving into them. I have played them a little bit. I'm not totally disappointed with them, but that's all I'm going to give away just now. So I'll bring them back up one more time to say that these 3 PC ports to the DS, well, they're in the collection and they're definitely going to be in there forever. Now that's the last of the Nintendo DS, whether it be 3DS or just plain old DS. And we're moving on to the PlayStation 2. Home turf again, but will the PlayStation 2 be shovelware like I tend to pick up, looking for that terrible bad license game? Or will it be an important game that I should pick up and have picked up? Well, let's start with the first one because it is a license game and it's Terminator 3 Redemption. Now, of course, seeing a licensed game out there for the PlayStation 2, I'm definitely going to pick it up. It's just that I seem to be wired that way. But while I was browsing the shelves, a good friend of mine, also known as the dealer, did make quite a song and dance about the fact that this been quite an enjoyable game. Now, as I do with most of the games that I pick up, if I've never played them before, then I stick them on to at least make sure they're working and give them a fair maybe half hour or so. And with the half hour or so that I put into Terminator 3 Redemption, I think I can say, hand on heart, this isn't a terrible game. Now, full disclosure, it was only 30 to 40 minutes worth of gameplay, but what I did play of it didn't upset me, not even in the slightest, and it's definitely one that I'm going to go back into and have a proper deep dive into. So that's Terminator 3 Redemption for the PlayStation 2, coming into the collection where it will stay forever. Next up, we're still with the PlayStation 2, and this game here was picked up mainly because of the cover art, and I think I may have seen some gameplay somewhere at some point, and that game is Total Overdose. Now, I don't know about you, but when it comes to box art that looks, well, almost 90s, very early noughties, then I've got to pick it up 9 out of 10 times when it comes to the PlayStation 2 anyway. What drew me more to this was looking at the back screenshots and thinking that it looked a bit like Just Cause meets Max Payne, and after playing about 30 minutes just to check the disc, it did kinda play like it played out in my head while I was looking at the box art. Not only the box art at the front, but the screenshots at the back. There's a definite nod to the Max Payne games, and there's a definite Just Cause vibe in there as well. I don't know if you've got this, if you want to talk about this, like any of the other games that you're seeing here just now. If you see a game that you want to talk about, that's what the comments are for. Just drop down there, let me know what you think, if you've got any opinions, and let me know whether I should have picked them up or not. But here is Total Overdose, and purely for that artwork, coming into the collection where it will stay forever and it will get played. Next up was a game that I had to bring into the collection because it's an important game. Not an important game from my youth, not back in the early noughties when the PlayStation 2 came out, but a new important game because it's Lucifers Call. Now, anyone from outside the PAL territories will probably recognise this as Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne and not Lucifers Call. Lucifers Call was the name that Shin Megami 3 got over here in PAL territories, and to be frankly honest, I have no idea why they would go down that route. Now, why is it important to me and why is it newly important? Well, that's quite simply Persona 5. Persona 5 opened my eyes to the whole Shin Megami Tensei world, and after getting just about everything that I could out of that game, I have went back and started looking at other games in the series, not only just the mainline Persona series, but now also onto the Shin Megami Tensei mainline games, and anything else I can pretty much get my hands on that has that Atlas name. That won't always work out for me. I do know there's some games out there that they have published as well as developed that aren't great, but so far so good with Atlas, and definitely so far so good with Shin Megami Tensei. Next up and last up for the PlayStation 2 is another collection of games, because I like a good collection of games, and this one is a Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2. Now, this one was an absolute no-brainer. When I saw it, I was going to pick it up because I do love game compilations, especially compilations of older games ported to slightly newer systems. Well, it was new at the time, the PlayStation 2, and it just gives you a more convenient way to play some of these wonderful arcade hits. Now, there is a good collection of the classic Capcom arcade machines here, but the ones that obviously drew me in the most was, believe it or not, the original Street Fighter, which is nowhere near as good as Street Fighter 2, but Super Street Fighter 2 is here. There's also Strider, a game that I absolutely love to hate. Well, I mostly just hate to hate it, but that's another story for another video. In 1941, I'm looking forward to going back to some World War II dogfighting on a vertical shooter, and Capcom Classics Volume 2 into the collection where it will stay forever. Now, as I said, that was the last of the PlayStation 2 games, and we're moving down a generation onto the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, and I only have one game, and it's a licensed game, but that doesn't normally mean it's quite as bad as a licensed game for the PlayStation 2, but this one just happens to be the XFiles. Now, this is a game that I've never played, not once. I haven't even seen any gameplay footage of it, and after picking it up for myself, the only experience I have of the game is about 30 minutes of testing the discs. And let me tell you, this game is something completely different. Well, completely different from what I would expect from an XFiles game from the mid to late 90s. Now, I don't know why I would think it would be some sort of action shooter game. It just seemed that that was what the licensed games tended to be. What they weren't often was FMV point and click adventures, and that's exactly what the XFiles on the PlayStation is. Now, I will give you fair warning, if you do pick up this full motion video point and click adventure for yourself, you can't play it on a PlayStation 2 or a PlayStation 3. Unfortunately, the emulation that they use for those machines, this game doesn't work with it, or at least the cursor, the most important part of a point and click game, the cursor doesn't work unless it's in an original PlayStation. But that's the XFiles. It's a great license, it's a license I love. It's on a system I love, and it's into the collection for better or worse, forever. So that's the last of the PlayStation, and well, obviously we're moving away from PlayStation, down a generation or so, and onto another Nintendo game, and this one is a Game Boy Color. Don't buy a lot of Game Boy Color, don't buy a lot of Game Boy, but when I saw Tomb Raider for the Game Boy Color, I just had to pick this up. Now, of course, I know that Tomb Raider in the Game Boy Color is not going to play anything like Tomb Raider on the Sega Saturn or the Sony PlayStation, but anyone who gets to know me knows one thing, that I love weird stuff that gets forced onto stuff that it shouldn't be forced on, and the very thought of putting a Tomb Raider game on the Game Boy, well, that was just too much for me to resist. Now, I probably won't play this on an original Game Boy, I will play this on my Game Boy player on a much larger screen, because these old eyes, they need the larger screen. But for better or worse again, Tomb Raider for the Game Boy Color is into the collection where it's going to stay and get played forever. Now, that was the only Game Boy game, and we're moving down a generation again, staying with Nintendo, and it's going to be the Super Nintendo, the SNES, and the game that I picked up is Super Tennis. Now, I know a lot of you out there will be saying Super Tennis, that's a really common game, it's not an expensive game, it's not even the greatest of games, but this is an example of me actually sticking to my guns. And it's also due to the wonderful Super Nintendo for bringing back old memories about games that I forgot I did put a lot of time into, and well, Super Tennis was certainly one of those games. Back in my college days, when we were actively avoiding classes, we would end up at a friend's house who had a Super Nintendo, and he only had two games. One was Mario Kart and the other Super Tennis. And yes, Mario Kart's a fantastic game. It is a game that has been ported to just about every Nintendo system that was ever created, but for some reason with us it was Super Tennis that held our attention much more. And as I said also, it was just because Super Nintendo tweeted, if you had an SNES at the moment, what game would you be playing? And when I thought about it, this was the first one that jumped into my head. And you know what, rightly so. It's a great little tennis game. It was fantastic for the time, it's great fun to play now, and I'm quite happy that Super Tennis is into my collection for the very first time, and it's going to stay there now forever. Now, that was the last of the Nintendo. We're staying with the same generation because we're going to be moving on to the Mega Drive. I have picked up one game for the mighty Mega Drive, and it is an important game. It's an important nostalgic game, and it's also a game that I absolutely detest. I hate, I can't explain in enough words how much I do not like Altered Beast. And yes, I can even go back to say that I didn't really enjoy it when it was on the arcade cabinets either. But the thing is, when I was introduced to the Mega Drive in 1991, I had two games. I had Sonic the Hedgehog and Altered Beast. Now, thankfully, Sonic the Hedgehog is a much better game than Altered Beast and gave much more entertainment value, and we could play it for much longer. But there were times where you just wanted to change up a bit, and when you did, and all you had was Altered Beast to pop into the Mega Drive, well, you popped Altered Beast into the Mega Drive and you reminded yourself again and again just how much you detested this game. So yes, you're on one hand saying, why would you bring in a game that you absolutely detest? Well, the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia. This is an important game in my particular history with video games. It's as simple as that. It needs to be in here. There are other games up there that are bad games that I don't like that were with me at the time, and they're in the collection now, so Altered Beast had to come in, and he's going to be in there forever. Moving on, we're going down a generation, we're staying with Sega, it's going to be the Master System, and I did pick up Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, as you recall from my last pickups video, I did pick up Sonic the Hedgehog for the Master System, loose cart, and I did say at the time that I was going to upgrade to complete in box as soon as I could, and well, it only took a couple of weeks to upgrade Sonic the Hedgehog in the Master System to complete in box. I believe that's a different story if you're over the pond in the US of A, but over here in Palland we can pick up Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System for quite cheap. Sorry about that, but he's in my collection. And he's in there for good, and if you're American and you're looking for a copy of this that you can play over there, give us UK gamers a shout. Now next up, and still with the Master System, we're looking at another arcade port, but this is a good arcade game, a game that I liked in the arcades. I don't want to keep this in Altered Beast, but I really didn't like Altered Beast. But this game, ported to the Master System, hopefully it's a decent port. I'm sure some people might agree it is, and that is Outrun. And yes, I did, like most other people, absolutely adore Outrun in the arcades. I didn't have a Master System back in the day, so I haven't played this particular port of Outrun, but I'm fairly confident that this is going to be a decent port. I'm sure I've seen plenty of people talk about Outrun being a decent port on the Master System. It's a game that's fairly easy to port, I suppose, but we'll see. I'll probably even do a video of its own for Outrun, and maybe even compare it to Battle Outrun, just to see what the differences are, see if there was any improvements from one to the other, see which one I like the best. But that's Outrun, and it's the 2 mega cartridge coming into the collection where it will stay forever. Now next up and last up for the Master System is a game that I'm bringing in, not because I have any sort of history with the game, it's just a developer that I wish I had more history with, and that is the Bitmap Brothers, and the game that I picked up is Xenon 2 Mega Blast. Now, from what I remember from back in the day, Xenon 2 was a fairly well respected vertical shoot 'em up, and again I'll point out one of the main reasons I picked it up was it was a Bitmap Brothers game. I don't have a lot of representation of them up here in the collection, and they were a hugely important developer for the 16-bit microcomputer era. Again, that was an era that I completely missed. I personally went from 8-bit microcomputers to IBM compatible PCs and the Sega Mega Drive, so the 16-bit microcomputers such as the Atari ST and the Commodore Amiga were things that I had very little involvement with, but the Bitmap Brothers were hugely involved with them, and it's not too hard to imagine that their work would translate from the 16-bit and 8-bit microcomputers over to the 8-bit consoles and 16-bit consoles at that too. So Xenon 2 Mega Blast coming into the collection where it will stay forever. And next up, we're moving away from the consoles altogether and onto the 8-bit microcomputers, and it's a ZX Spectrum game, and anyone who's watched my previous two videos will know exactly what game this is, because as soon as I picked it up I had to make some videos about it, and that's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and the double header of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, both on the ZX Spectrum, both really bad games. And if you want to see some of the gameplay of that, you can check back on the videos previous. I might even put a link down in the descriptions if you really want to torture yourself that much. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to have it in a collection. I love ZX Spectrum games, they were the first games that I owned, and licensed games, they were the games that we were after when we were kids. And indie, there was no bigger license, but it's in the collection now. Happy that it's there, and happy that I probably don't need to play it for a good long while. So there you go my friends, that's my video game pickups for the last month. And what did you think? Any games in that pile that you have in your collection, or games that you're hunting for just now, or games that you're glad that you just don't have in your collection? If so, let me know down in the comments, because interaction between you and me, well, that's what makes YouTube special. It does for me anyway. Thank you again for watching as always, and if you're new to the channel, I'll pop a couple of boxes up here and here, and that will have links to other videos that you might find interesting. Thank you again for watching, and until next time as always, cheerio!